hip cool Fantasticats, welcome to the first ever episode of Fantastico After Dark. Tonight I'll be sitting down to have a chat with the lovely and talented and amazing Brinke Stevens.
Just get on with it.
Oh yeah, he's still here as well. Fantastico After Dark has all of the interview and none of the bullshit. I hope you enjoy.
Oh, they won't. Oh, well, maybe they'll enjoy your guests, but not you.
Shut up or I'm donating you to a children's Halloween party.
Oh, you wouldn't.
I totally would. Anywho, with that said, I would like to interview my first guest of the new show, my good pal Brinke Stevens. Brinke, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Not that I had much of a choice. And can I get these restraints off me pretty soon?
Damn it, Francois, you weren't supposed to tie her up.
My bad.
I'll just get to the questions before Francois decides to keep you. You're a creepo, dude.
Oh, bite me, luchador.
Anywho, so Brinke, you went to school and became a marine biologist, is that right?
I never intended to be an actress. It was a complete accident. I never aspired to it. I never took acting classes. I was determined to be a marine biologist and work with dolphins, specifically dolphin communication. So I went to Scripps Institute of Oceanography and ended up with a master's degree, but nobody wanted to work with dolphins at that time because the Navy was strapping bombs on their back and blowing up submarines. And San Diego was also the hub of the tuna fishing industry, which was killing 1,000 dolphins a day in their tuna nets. So, you know, you'd feel terribly guilty about slaughtering them if you could talk to them.
Wow, I remember hearing about that stuff. I didn't realize that it was true. But man, marine biology, that's pretty cool. I know a lot of people that have said I want to be a marine biologist, but never really pursued it. You actually pursued it. That's pretty awesome. You're literally the only person I've ever met that did it.
I originally wanted to be an astronaut and be a xenobiologist, the first woman on another planet to study alien life.
That's awesome.
But the space program wasn't keeping up with my ambitions. So the ocean was kind of a last undiscovered frontier on Earth. And I wanted to work with mammals, not with fish. They're kind of boring. So I did work with dolphins to some extent, seals. I was doing my doctoral degree on vision and seals. I also worked with otters, which are amazing. I love otters. And it was good. It was so much fun. I had a wonderful time in marine biology.
That's pretty rad. So what led you from that career into acting? What was the time frame for that?
My graduate school came to a tragic end when I was kicked out of school for illicit research. When I enrolled, they said, what do you want to do your doctorate on? And I said, dolphin communication. And they're like, no, absolutely not. You're forbidden to do that. Wow. So I said, well, okay, I'll do seals. So I worked on vision and seals. But meanwhile, I was doing a research library, compiling that for SeaWorld. So I worked there as a volunteer several days a week. They had 2 baby dolphins that had just been born, and they put them in a tank that was right outside my office door at SeaWorld. So I would just sit there and watch them, and that was it. And then one of the other graduate students, who was very jealous of me and wanted to do harm, told Scripps that I was doing illegal dolphin research at SeaWorld. And they called me on the carpet and said, you can't stay here any longer. And I'm like, excuse me, what? And I didn't even get to defend myself. They just kicked me out with a master's degree. So I never did finish my doctorate.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Like, I knew there was some stigma going on with dolphin research, but that's pretty crazy.
The politics was terrible, and Scripps had been an entirely male school up until 2 years before I enrolled. So they did not want women there. They thought you're just there to find a husband and you'll leave, and why should we invest time and money in you? So I experienced tremendous prejudice right from the beginning just because I was female.
Man, that's messed up.
Totally.
You could have done some awesome things in that field.
It turns out that 13 years later, someone else proposed the same theories that I had about dolphin communication, which was that they weren't using words or sounds, they were using radar to communicate, sonar. Yeah, and someone else proposed that, and that's probably true, but it took 13 years for the rest of the world to catch up with me.
Wow, that's incredible. But look at it this way. What you ended up doing is pretty rad as well. You've brought joy to a lot of people. But man, if they would have just given you the chance you deserved, I can't even imagine how much you would have accomplished. And you're a pretty intelligent person based on our conversations in the past. I really do feel that you would have done some spectacular things in your field. So
I would have enjoyed staying in marine biology and having some nice little lab in Hawaii working with dolphins, but fate had other plans. I always say that my career chose me, I didn't choose it. So after I got kicked out of school, I bummed around San Diego, walked on the beach for 6 months, didn't know what I was going to do. And then my college sweetheart, Dave Stevens, a graphic artist, had moved up to LA to do storyboards for Steven Spielberg on Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he said, I've got a good job, I'm making a lot of money, come up to Los Angeles, let's get married. So that provided a direction for me. I sold everything I owned in San Diego, moved up to LA, and married Dave. Our marriage only lasted for 2 years because he was impossible to get along with. But I ended up being in Los Angeles, and that was how I accidentally fell into acting.
oh wow. Okay. Did you have any roles before Slumber Party Massacre? Because that flick, that was like your first major role, correct? Did you do a lot of stuff prior to that?
I had never done any acting before Slumber Party Massacre. I did star in one short film called Zizek is King for Dan Golden, who was enrolled at USC at the time. And I went on to continue working with Dan for many years. But there's a misconception. There's a movie called Necromancy starring Orson Welles that was shot in 1972. And people always say that was my first movie, but it wasn't. They shot additional footage in the 80s. And I was a featured extra in some coven scenes that they added to spice it up. So I did not work on it in 72. It was not my first movie. I shot additional scenes in the 80s. So Slumber Party was really my first feature film. And it's still the one I'm best known for. People always say, Brinke Stevens, star of Slumber Party Massacre. So I can't get away from it.
That's really funny because usually when someone says your name, I'll go to like either Sorority Babes, Nightmare Sisters, or Haunting Fear. Because I really freaking love that movie.
Oh, he does. He watches it endlessly. I had to hide his VHS copy.
No, you didn't, and no, I don't. Ugh, shut up, you. Ugh. Anywho, yeah, Haunting Fear, it's amazing, right? But also Teenage Exorcist, that might be my favorite of all your films.
Thank you.
So Slumber Party Massacre is a hell of a way to jump right into the slasher genre. How did that come about?
I had done a little bit of modeling in San Diego, and so I had a portfolio of pictures. And I had set up an appointment for a modeling agency one day, an advertising agency. I was bringing my portfolio, and they forgot about the meeting. So when I got there, the secretary said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, they forgot, they've gone home already." So I'm trudging down a hallway, and I pass an open door, look in, and I see there's all the colorful movie posters on the wall. So I'm looking at the posters, and I didn't realize there was a guy sitting behind a desk looking at me. And he said, "You, come here, show me what you got." And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm in the wrong place." So I came in, he flipped through my modeling portfolio, and he said, "You want to be in a movie tomorrow?" And I'm like, okay. So I was an extra in All the Marbles, a Peter Falk movie. And I thought, well, I can do this. It's a way to make a living until I can find a science job in Los Angeles. So then I started answering ads in Dramalog for casting. And Slumber Party Massacre was the first one I saw. Then the ad was something like 12 pretty girls needed to get naked and die horribly. And I thought, oh, that's for me.
You're like, all right.
Why not? That's a challenge. So I went to the audition. I met Amy Jones, the director, and I was cast in the movie. And I was actually hired for a larger role, one of the main girls at the party. but I already had a modeling assignment at Lake Tahoe and it overlapped. So they had to give me a smaller part and kill me off so I could get to the other assignment. I didn't realize at the time how rare it was that this slasher movie had a female director and a female writer. I would never encounter that again until
Really?
I directed Sorority Babes 2. There were no female directors and very few, if any, female writers. It was just unheard of. So I didn't fully appreciate it at the time, but wow, did that set that movie apart. And I think that's one of the reasons it became a cult classic. It's a great film for me to be associated with. It's got humor, a dark humor, but it holds up over time.
Very much so. Very rare. I didn't even realize it either until recently. Amy Jones seems like she was really cool. Is she cool?
Amy was wonderful to work with. She has since gone on to do The Resident on TV.
No.
She did a movie with Jamie Lee Curtis called Love Letters. She was very competent. And the story I heard was that she had been an editor and she wanted to be a director. So she asked Roger Corman if she could direct something. But because she was new and untried, he said, well, shoot a 10-minute reel and let me know, show me what you can do. So she did kind of a sizzle reel for Slumber Party, which at the time was called Sleepless Night. And he hired her for that. So that was how she got involved. And she kind of directed like a guy, like more nudity, take those clothes off, get in the shower, show your butt.
That's funny.
Yeah, she knew what was needed and wanted at the time. And recently, sadly, the villain of the piece, Michael Valella, passed away.
Oh, no.
He was substantially older than the rest of us, but I saw him a lot at conventions when they would have Slumber Party reunions. He was a wonderful man. He still owned the family's villa in Italy, and he had walked through it with his cell phone camera and showed us a video of his house in Italy. Just a lovely man. So in September, those of us that are still in LA are doing a panel to honor Michael Valella.
Oh.
His daughter Chloe will be there at HorrorCon in downtown Los Angeles.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Man, I had no idea that they had passed away. That sucks. So with this flick, did you have fun getting killed on film?
It was amazing to get killed on film. Of course, I'd never screamed. I've never been chased by a madman. I never died in a movie or anywhere. So you're called upon as an actress, and this is my first acting job, to do things that you'd never experience in real life. And yet I found I was pretty good at it. I don't know where it came from, but right off the bat, I had a great scream. The sound guy took me out in the parking lot with a reel-to-reel tape recorder, and we recorded me screaming for like 45 minutes. I'm just amazed nobody called the police. And finally, they got the perfect scream, which would tell the story of my death because you don't actually see me die,
Right.
which is how years later, Jim Wynorski did a movie that was unofficially Slumber Party 4. I think it was called Cheerleader Massacre. And he wanted me to reprise my character of Linda. And I said, well, I died in the first movie. And he said, well, we never saw you dead. Maybe you were horribly maimed, but you survived. So when I shot the sequel for Jim, I had a sleeveless dress on. And I said, well, don't you think we should do some horrible scar on my arm? Because in the first movie, you see the drill come in. And he's like, we don't have time for that. And that's too bad because I think that really would have sold it, if Linda was horribly scarred and when they come and talk to her again.
Man, that would have been pretty damn cool. I didn't realize that Cheerleader Massacre was an unofficial part 4. It's pretty awesome. Now I need to go watch it again.
I think that Jim wanted it to be officially Slumber Party 4, but it was a no-go with Corman. So he went off and did his own version.
Fair enough. So finish up this movie and you start getting offered roles and acting in a ton of slashers and horror films. Were you just like, well, this is my life now. I'm part of this world now.
Around the time that I did Slumber Party Massacre, which came out in '82, I had run into Michelle Bauer and Linnea Quigley over and over again at auditions. We were all in the same place at the same time, trying out for the same movies. And they introduced me to Dave Dakota and Fred Olin Ray. And I had already met Jim Wynorski, who was a publicist on Slumber Party Massacre. So those gentlemen hired us frequently. I worked many, many movies with Fred Olin Ray in the 80s and partly into the 90s. So then at some point, I kept trying out for A-list films. And I did get some small parts in big movies. I was in Psycho 3 as a body double for Diana Scarwood. And I was in Spinal Tap. I actually had a line in that, but I think it was cut from the movie. And many things. I was in Three Amigos in the beginning, the movie within a movie. So I did have experience. Body double. I worked a week on body double, but my career just never took off as an A-list actress.
Huh.
I don't know why. One of the reasons might have been the casting couch, but and which I wouldn't do. I absolutely refused. But
Right.
most of the times I got hit on, it was for lower budget stuff, not in the horror industry. I have to say that everybody I worked with, the men in the horror industry, are totally above board and gentlemen. They, it's a very small clique, a group. And if anyone did anything unseemly, everyone would know about it. So the producers and directors in the horror industry were just wonderful to me. And I got stuck in it, but it's a great place to be stuck.
For sure. And like I said before, you've brought joy to so many people being in these awesome films. And you still do every day because we all go back and watch them constantly. Even as a filmmaker, we go back, watch these flicks, and truthfully, you add validity to these films. I know that if I see your face in the flick, it's going to be a fun movie. Same goes with Michelle and Linnea.
One of the nice things about working with Linnea and Michelle is that the three of us can really act.
Mhm.
And so many other women at that time were just bodies. They had the big bosoms and they were hired for their toplessness and stuff, but they really weren't very good actors. So the three of us continued to work and be in demand because we really could act. Case in point, Nightmare Sisters. If you look at like the beginning scene where the three of us are nerds, it goes on for like 12 minutes. The camera never moves. We did it in one take because we were so rehearsed. And you can tell the chemistry between us, that we really are friends and we like each other. It was just magic. I thought Nightmare Sisters and Sorority Babes were just lightning in a bottle. They became cult classics with good reason.
Truth. It very much comes across that you guys are pretty good friends. And it really does change the dynamic of the films when you see people act together that really want to be on screen together. And it's because you play off of each other so well. And having the acting chops, you've proved that in your films. Haunting Fear, come on. You were showcasing your acting chops like big time in that flick. Haunting Fear, it doesn't even get close to the respect it deserves.
When asked, I always say that Haunting Fear is my favorite film that I've been in. And the reason is because I'm in the whole movie and I survive at the end, which was very rare for me, to survive in a movie. I've been a victim so many times. When Haunting Fair first came about, Fred Ray handed me the script and he said, "Here, read this and tell me what you think." So I read the script and I started responding in a critique of his writing. And he said, no, I didn't mean read it and, correct the script. I meant tell me if you want to be in it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I thought he had the secretary in mind for me because it was a smaller part. It was sexy, nudity. And he said, no, I want you to play the lead. I had never really played a lead like that before, where I'm in almost every scene. I'm working with Jan Michael Vincent and Karen Black and Robert Quarry, who played Count Yorga. So it was quite an honor. I am thrilled that Fred believed in me and trusted me enough to do that. And the makeup, John Vulich from Optic Nerve did a wonderful job on the makeup. When I break out of the coffin and go crazy, I was in makeup. I went into the bathroom and I happened to look in the mirror and I'm like, I scared myself.
That's awesome. That makeup is amazing. Actually, I actually had that in my notes, like when I was prepping to have this chat with you about how good that looks, especially during the scene where you break out of the coffin. Let's check that out real quick. Projector guy, if you would please.
On it.
Wow, that scene, man, your makeup holds up. It just really holds up.
Another thing I liked about Haunting Fear was the arc of my character changes so radically, where I start out a real victim. My husband's trying to kill me and gaslight me. And in the end, I'm a homicidal maniac. So it's really fun. I like killing people. In grandmother's house, there was a similar scene where I've got a butcher knife in my hand and I'm chasing the sheriff and stabbing him like I did with Delia Shepard in Haunting Fear. So there's just something so liberating about just,
That's great.
I love my work.
All right, so let's dive a little more into Haunting Fear if you want to, because I'd love to pick your brain about it. So Haunting Fear, and we touched a little bit on this. It's a different kind of animal than most of the stuff you've done prior to, and it's a more psychological and dramatic role for you. Did you realize at the time that it was actually based on a Poe story?
It was loosely based on an Edgar Allan Poe story, The Premature Burial, which suddenly was like a thing at that time. There was another movie called Buried Alive, and so on. So suddenly, this trend was popular, but I think it was only very loosely based on Poe.
Yeah.
It just sounded good above the title.
Did doing a role that intense take a lot out of you? I've done a little bit of that type of thing, and it's freaking exhausting. How did you feel doing that type of intense, unhinged role?
I enjoyed all of my scenes. There was a lot of variety in them. The nightmares and things like that, where I'm panicked and then going mad as I'm coming out of the coffin. One of my favorite scenes was with Michael Berryman, an autopsy scene. And I had not met him before. I was familiar with him. I'd seen some of his movies, but we'd never met in person or worked together. So it was really fun. I'm laying there on a real autopsy table. And Michael comes in and I'm nervous, and he's, strange looking and kind of creepy in this role. And I said, I hope your hands are warm. And he's like, I've kept them in the freezer all morning for you. And we became friends. It made it easier. He's got a great sense of humor. And I wrote a movie called Teenage Exorcist and hired Michael to be in that as the creepy real estate agent. So our paths have crossed many times since that movie, but I'll always remember my first time with him.
Who wouldn't?
Michael Berryman rules.
He sure does. And man, Teenage Exorcist is so good.
There's a whole story about how Teenage Exorcist came about. There's a film conference in LA called the AFM, American Film Mart, where they try to pre-sell movies to raise money to shoot them.
Okay.
Red had done a flyer for a movie called Teenage Exorcist, and his then wife, Dawn Wildsmith, was on the cover in sort of a dominatrix outfit. And Fred said, would you be in this movie? Can I put your name on the flyer? And I said, sure, absolutely. So he took it to the AFM, but I don't think he made any pre-sales at all. Nobody was hooked by it. So months went by, and I said, are we ever going to shoot Teenage Exorcist? And he said, oh, it was just a gimmick. I was trying to sell it. Honestly, I don't even have a script. And I said, well, can I write the script? Because I'd already written several scripts by then. And he said, okay, show me what you got. So I teamed up with Ted Newsom, who I had written with before. We created this script. And originally, The Teenage Exorcist was a blonde teenage girl named Buffy. And this was before Buffy the Vampire Slayer, not just the TV show, but also the movie. We didn't know. So I I write the script, Fred puts it in a pile, and another filmmaker, Grant Austin Waldman, who was working with Fred and producing some of Fred's movies, had scheduled a shoot on one of his scripts, his films, and something happened. It fell through at the last minute, and he had already rented the camera equipment, the lights, and so on. So he frantically called up Fred and said, "Do you have any scripts that I can shoot ASAP?" So Fred sent over a pile of like 6 scripts to Grant, and Teenage Exorcist was one of them. Grant said, "Okay, I'll take this one. I'll take Teenage Exorcist." And Fred is like, "Well, Brink wrote it, and she wrote the lead character for herself." And Grant's like, "Nah, I can't see her playing that role." This is Hollywood for you. So I begged and cajoled, and finally Grant was willing to let me play the role. At that point, it was a Friday. We were going to start shooting on Monday, and we didn't have a teenage exorcist, a blonde girl to play Buffy. So we tried and tried and tried, and it's not like they don't get off the bus every day in Los Angeles, but we just couldn't find the right actress. So Eddie Deason had worked with Grant and Fred before. Grant's like, "Let's call my friend Eddie Deason. He'll play the teenage exorcist." And I'm like, "He's neither blonde, female, nor a teenager." And Grant's like, "It won't matter. We'll make it work." So Eddie was brought in, and during our lunch times, I would be busily rewriting the script to fit Eddie, because there were lines like, "Oh, look at the time. Mom's expecting me home," that just wouldn't work with Eddie. So I was acting during the day, and then every lunch break, I'd be rewriting my own script. And it was really tough. But I think there was a lot of humor in it. Robert Corey does an amazing job as the priest. Grant was in it briefly as the guy at San Remo's Pizza. Eddie was really funny, and I just thought it worked. It was a delightful little comedy.
Oh, it's a ton of fun. My favorite scene. There are a lot of scenes, but my favorite is when you're tied down on the bed and your sister's husband's talking to you, and you're like trying to like demonically seduce him or whatever, and you're telling him to go lower, so he just lowers his voice. It's freaking hilarious. But yeah, let's go ahead and fire up that clip.
Is this it?
Ooh, no, not quite. Just a little to the left.
I shouldn't be doing this.
Oh, a little lower.
I shouldn't be doing this.
Lower.
I shouldn't be doing this.
Oh, I love it when you use that tone of voice.
Yeah, it's an old joke where you
That's so
keep
funny.
lowering your voice, lower. But yeah, we threw everything in there, and it was fun. And Ted was a good person to work with. He was in the Writers Guild, so he couldn't put his name on the script because it was non-union. But Ted was a great comedy writer. He's since passed away, but I enjoyed working with him.
Teenage Exorcist was one of those movies that wasn't even on my radar. I didn't even know about it until just like a few years ago. I was like, why the hell have I not known about this movie?
That was a problem with a lot of my movies from the 80s, is they were just kind of cheap throwaway movies. No one expected them to last or to become called classics. Nightmare Sisters, when it first came out, I was told they only pressed 4,000 VHS copies of it, which is very, very low. And, so no one really expected these movies to survive and thrive. Some of them are pretty obscure, but it becomes like a treasure hunt for people to pick up. And now VHS is popular again. So at conventions, I've been doing a lot of signing of VHS covers for Haunting Fear and things like that.
That's pretty cool.
Haunting Fear was originally released on VHS, and somehow TROMA was involved. I'm not entirely clear what that was, but they owned the rights to it for 30 years. There was a DVD, but it was bootleg. It was not authorized. And TROMA never released a DVD of it because they didn't realize it was a union movie, and they would have to pay residuals. Lloyd didn't want to have to do that. So after 30 years, the rights reverted to Fred Olen Ray, who wrote and directed it. And I said, "Are you going to put it out on DVD?" And he said, I don't think anybody cares after 30 years. And I said, well, I've kept it alive. Every interview, I always say it's my favorite movie that nobody can see. So give it a try. Fred did a limited pressing of 1,000 DVDs, Blu-rays, and they sold out immediately. You know, now those are probably extremely valuable. And then he went and did a second pressing. So there was still a lot of interest in it.
As there should be. That flick, just like Haunting Fear, doesn't get nearly enough attention either. I didn't realize that there were issues with a release like that. I guess I should do better research, apparently.
Oh, yeah, no shit. Tell us something we don't know.
Go choke on a gobstopper, dick. Anywho, yeah, this and Haunting Fear, underrated as hell.
I'd also written a sequel to Haunting Fear because my character is still alive at the end and kind of looks crazy. So I thought, well, this would be something interesting to pursue. So I asked Fred if I could write a sequel, and he said, well, I don't know that anyone would be interested, but go ahead. So I did, and years went by. He never made it, and whenever I would ask him about it, he's like, well, I think too much time has gone by. Nobody really would remember the first movie, and it wasn't released anyway widely. So someone else up in Central California bought the script, and I changed it enough that it was no longer a sequel to Haunting Fear. It stood on its own, and we filmed parts of it, but the producer died, and the movie was never finished. So that's another one of my projects in limbo, where I had a script called Buried Nightmares, and intended as a sequel, partly made, never finished.
Oh, damn. So do you own any of the rights to it? Like any of the rights to the characters or the title or anything like that?
I don't think I really own the rights to the scripts that I've sold. And I've sold 4 or 6 scripts. Teenage Exorcist, Wild Spirit, Personal Demons. There was an earthquake safety video that Shelley Duvall narrated, and various things. But I believe it's a work for hire. You sign over your rights when you turn it in.
So then you're just a functionary type of thing. Okay, then.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been cool if you would have been able to do that, especially if it wouldn't have had to be changed around. It would have been actually a true sequel. I think people would care, especially now. So here's a fun one. How was it working with Jan Michael Vincent? Because I hear stories.
Oh, there's stories about Jan Michael Vincent. He was kind of on his way down the ladder of success at that point. He had trouble with drugs, I suppose, but Fred was able to afford him. He only worked one day, and I believe he was paid $10,000 for one day. So he shows up 2 hours late for filming, and he's barefoot. And Fred had asked him to bring his own shoes because there was some issue about Jan Michael Vincent's feet, like he was 2 different sizes of shoes or whatever, and we didn't have shoes that would work for him. So he doesn't bring his own shoes. So they're trying not to show his feet when he walks into a scene. Then as soon as he arrives at the house we're shooting at in downtown Los Angeles, he goes up to his private room, which was one of the bedrooms, and turns on the TV and won't come out of the room. So after about half an hour of them waiting for him to come down, Fred's like, well, you go up and get him. And I'm always the one that has to do this, the dirty work. So I go up, I knock on the door, and he's watching television, and he's like, shut up and sit down. So I sit down and I wait while he finishes watching this cartoon on television. And I said, is there anything I can get you, Mr. Vincent? And he said, yeah, a pound of blow would be nice. And I said, I'm sorry, sir, I don't think our budget would accommodate that. Would you like to come downstairs and work with me now?
Oh, man, what did he say?
He did. He came down, and he turned in a reasonably good job. But then later he had that terrible car accident and was kind of ruined. So I'm glad I got to work with him when I did. I have a similar story about Warlords with David Carradine. Carradine was quite a heavy drinker at that point. And we were shooting out at Vasquez Rocks for some of the tribal scenes with Sid Haig and all that. I played David Carradine's wife, and Sid Haig, the warlord, had kidnapped me. and David Carradine's looking for me through the whole movie. So he's in his trailer, and he won't come out. And Fred says, Brink, go get him. Bring him out. You're his wife. So
Amazing.
I knock on the door, and I open it, and this vodka bottle, empty vodka bottle, comes spiraling out the door and almost clobbers me.
Oh, man.
And he's throwing things now. So I'm like, I'm sorry, sir. You really need to come out and work the scene with me. And he did. But, that's the problem when you are working with actors that are on the downside of their heyday, like those two were. They're a name, they have value, they sell movies, but they're a little bit damaged.
Yeah, I can see that. But it's super cool that you got to work with all these amazing actors, like David Carradine. That's pretty damn cool. Jan Michael Vincent, he's awesome. I love me some Airwolf just like everyone else.
No one cares about your love for Airwolf.
But yeah, like very cool.
It was also great working with Sid Haig in Warlords. Mm-hmm. He was such a sweetheart. After he did the Rob Zombie movies, he was extremely popular at conventions. Before he couldn't get arrested, like nobody knew who he was, even after Spider Baby debut and all that. He just wasn't popular until after the Rob Zombie movies. So he and I and Bill Moseley and Ken Foray started doing a lot of conventions together at the same time. And I was like their little sister. I would watch their carry-on bags while they went and roamed the airport and bought food and magazines and stuff. And then they would take care of me. They'd carry my bags. They'd watch out for me. And they were really sweet to me. Sid was just wonderful.
Yeah, Ken and I are old pals. That's really fun to hear. I have fond memories of Sid Haig and Bill. Actually, all three of those guys together. Ken and I almost got kicked out of a horror con for singing the Indiana State song with Sid very loudly. Bill's over there telling us not to give up our day jobs. Funny stuff. But I love those guys. Sid was great. It's awesome to hear that they were so great to you. But it doesn't surprise me at all. Ken rules.
Ken Foray is a real sweetheart, too. I almost starred in a movie with him called Pale Dreamer. There was a really good script, and it was about a crew on a ship, a salvage ship, and Ken was one of the main characters. And they try to salvage this derelict ship, not realizing there's two aliens on board, and I play one of them. And the other was Joseph Pilato. Mm-hmm. So we're just horrible people. It's like anyone who doesn't need oxygen to breathe, raise your hand. We're out to kill them. Awesome. And we shot quite a bit of the movie just using the producer's own money, but it was never picked up and never funded, so they never finished it. No. But I was really sad because we had our wardrobe, we had a flyer, a lot of publicity stuff. They built a lot of the ship interiors themselves. So I was really sad when Pale Dreamer didn't happen. I just saw Ken Foray earlier this year at the Canada convention, mm-hmm. and he mentioned that. He brought it up. He said it was too bad that movie never took off. And it's kind of the story of my career where I do a website, brink.com, and I also used to send out a newsletter. And on both of those venues, I would talk about movies I've got coming up. And in rereading them years later, almost half the stuff I say is going to start shooting soon never happened.
Oh,
it all fell through at the last minute because money has always been such a deciding factor in this. A lot of the indie films just can't get off the ground because lack of money. This is why I really enjoyed working with Fred Olen Ray and Roger Corman and those companies, because they had a pipeline of money. Full Moon, not a lot of money, but it was steady.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's still like that now. I mean, crowdfunding helps, but even then there's a lot of movies that people just can't get off the ground.
Yeah, the budgets have gotten less and less over the years. Equipment has gotten cheaper. Cameras have gotten smaller, light packages smaller. But you shoot a movie now for $30,000 or $40,000 when low budget used to be $300,000.
Right.
It's just now I think that because you can do CGI and special effects easier and better now, that's a bonus for low budget films. And also just having a good script. If you're going to do a really cheap movie, it better be a good story.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's talk some Transylvania twist. Betty Lou is a really fun character. That scene in the car is freaking hilarious. You were hamming it up too. I love how you hammed up that character. Like, such a great scene. Cracks me up, man. Was Transylvania twist fun?
I loved making Transylvania Twist, and I love watching it. It is so good. You know, the musical and all the acting was great. It was fun to work with Jim Wynorski on that. We used my own car, which is a 56 T-Bird, and I wore my Evola dress. I was a mascot for Monsterland magazine for basically 3 issues, a character named Evola. So I wore that dress. And I loved working with Ace Mask, who's a wonderful comedian. So I'm supposed to drink holy water and then throw up. And I didn't want to get the upholstery in my T-Bird messy. So what you don't see is that I've got this big towel on my lap with a big pan sitting on the towel, and I'm vomiting into the pan. And we just shot it. We shot it in a parking lot somewhere where it was really dark, so you couldn't quite see any background on it. But it was just kind of a one and done. I'm only in that scene, but I loved it. It was fun playing a vampire. And my T-Bird is a star too. I've sold it since then, and glad to get rid of it. Oh my God, it was so expensive to upkeep. But it also appeared in Attack of the Bee Movie Monster, which was renamed The Naked Monster, and a couple of other films show me T-Bird. So it was a movie star car.
Nice. The Naked Monster. That's a really funny movie as well. A lot of fun one-liners too. Old school homage to the monster movies. It's weird too because the release date on that is way later than it looks when you guys shot it. It came out in what, 2006 or something? And you guys shot it in what, the 80s?
I met Ted Newsom through other friends, and he had a pet project then it was called Attack of the Bee Movie Monster. And he asked me to be in it. So I played a scientist, Nikki, the world's something ichthyopaleontologist. And we shot some of the footage in the 80s. And then he created a 60-minute black and white version, which he tried to sell for a long time. And then later he said, I've got to shoot more footage and make it in color and do a 90-minute feature-length film. So years later, we shot more footage of it. I reprised my same character. And thank goodness I still had the wardrobe I had worn, and it still fit me, because we're shooting 10, 20 years later to finish the film. So it did finally come out, very small, limited release. You can get it on Amazon as The Naked Monster. And it is hysterical. Again, this is an example of Ted Newsom's comedy writing. He just pulls out all the stops, and every bad gag, it just spoofs all the monster movies. And he was lucky enough to get the old monster fighters like Ann Robinson, Ken Tobey, John Agar, most of whom have passed away in the meantime. But it's wonderful to see them, and they do little spoofs on their own films. Like Ken Tobey, who was in The Thing, puts on his leather jacket, and he goes, "Oh, my old monster fighting suit."
That's awesome. That's great. But that's what I was saying earlier. You have all of these movies and roles, and they're all fun as hell. Your filmography, like Sorority Babes, Nightmare Sisters, they get a lot of attention. But the rest of your films, they're really great. And I'm not just brown nosing. They're really fun, and they deserve so much more attention than they get.
That's one sad thing about my movies, is that some of them are obscure, and I wish that more people were able to see, like, for example, Sorority Babes and the Slime Ball Bolorama 2, which I directed. And I also directed and wrote Personal Demons, which is a 36-minute short that's on Terror Tunes 4. So it's run on Tubi and things like that. Of course, they cut the nudity out of stuff. But, streaming is very selective about what they show. I just wish there was some central library, like they talk about the Akashic Records, that there was a library that had one of every movie. And anytime you wanted to watch any film, you could find it. Otherwise, a lot of people have to search garage sales and yard sales to find my films.
You have to go to the flea markets and the dirt malls, man. That's such a shame too. It sucks. Even Transylvania Twist is hard to find. I had to really dig for that one.
You know, supposedly it had a good distribution and it was a wonderful movie. So I just don't know why it isn't more renowned than it is.
So yeah, that's what I kind of do on my regular show on Disasterpiece Theatre. I try to bring discourse to these films that wouldn't normally be seen by new audiences and even older audiences that had these like films slip through their radar.
Thank you. That what you just said ties in a little bit with Sorority Babes 2 and A New Generation. I got a call one night at home from Charles Band at Full Moon. And he said, Brink, I want to do a sequel to Sorority Babes. And I said, well, why are you telling me? I died in the first movie. And he goes, no, I want you to direct it. And I'm like, why, after 30-something years, are you doing this? And he said, I want to introduce a whole new generation to this movie. Also, probably because he owned the rights to it, you know, and may as well exploit it. But I got hired to direct it. I did it a couple of years ago in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was my first feature film that I'd ever directed. I loved it. It was wonderful. My producer, Billy Butler, did a great 80s sort of look with the costumes. And I'm really happy with that movie. It's never going to be as good as the first one because, like I said before, that was a lightning in a bottle. The first Sorority Babes was just magical. But the second one is an homage to it. And the critics were very kind to me when it came out. They could clearly see that I did my best. And given the restraints I had, like only 6 days to shoot it, that I did the best job I could. And I'm proud of that.
Very cool. I would love to do my show for Charles Band sometime. I'd have access to some of your stuff. I could really profile some of these things.
I did quite a few movies for Full Moon back in the day. Sorority Babes and Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, which I really liked that movie. The production value is great. The acting is fine. The sets are amazing. And I don't understand why Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity was not a bigger cult classic. It's kind of obscure. And it didn't take off. It didn't stick with people the way Slumber Party Massacre did, for example. But I think it really holds up. It's a fun little movie, and I enjoyed making it.
Yeah, you guys looked like you had a blast on the set of that movie too. And it was very different than some of the other things you'd done that I'd seen.
I had tried out for Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. I auditioned for it, and I didn't get the job. Then I got a phone call, and they said, the actress that we hired isn't working out. Are you available starting tomorrow? I'm like, okay. So I hadn't even memorized my lines. I wore all of my own clothes in the movie and just had to wing it. Later, after I knew it had been based loosely on The Most Dangerous Game. So I watched the Fay Wray movie later, and I was shocked that he had lifted whole chunks of dialogue from the first movie. Like they're on a ship and they're having this conversation, which is pretty much the same conversation we're having at the dinner table in Slave Girls. So Ken Dixon was, kind of bold to do that. But that was an example of where he just had a title that he thought was catchy. And hey, it's the 80s, catchy titles, naked babes, monsters. He brought in the title, and Charlie's like, great, let's shoot it. Write me a script.
Yeah, like, I don't like the way the women were sometimes treated back in the day in the industry, but I absolutely love the films from that era. They were so much fun. Now things just aren't as fun, and I don't really know what it is. I wish they just go back and make those types of flicks.
I've especially enjoyed the horror comedies that I've shot, like Sorority Babes, Nightmare Sisters, Slumber Party. And Nightmare Sisters, I just saw it on the big screen at a festival, and it still holds up after all these years. There's essentially no gore at all in it. And it's really funny. Michelle and I laughed out loud watching it again. The lines are great. The script is good. And despite the nudity in it, it's really very innocent. And I think the 80s had a certain innocence, at least the movies I did. And that was fun to do, too. It wasn't like torture porn, or anything like that back then.
Yeah, that's a very valid assessment. And we talked a bit about this before, but Nightmare Sisters is just a really fun movie. You guys as the nerds, it was just a blast. And you and I talked about this a while back, the scenes where you're talking to the dude about the dolphins, which totally makes sense now. That's probably all stuff you already knew. Did you write those factoids in?
Nightmare Sisters was written by Kenneth J. Hall, who did a wonderful job on the script. And he knew about my background as a marine biologist. So it was Ken who wrote that into the script, where we're looking at my photo album. And I do this funny comment about dolphins and porpoises. And then later, I'm doing a seance and I'm saying these things that are written in the script, like, foreign words. And then halfway through, I halted and I said, Ken, this isn't a real demon incantation, is it? and he said, no, I changed it just enough. Well, I never forgot that. And then years later, I was invited to submit an idea for Terratoons 4 anthology. So I submitted an idea where a horror actress gets a script and has a demon incantation and accidentally summons a real demon, but nobody else can see it. So I titled it Personal Demons, and that's what appears on Terratoons 4 anthology.
Okay.
And it's also on Tubi right now. So if you go look up Terratoons 4, and my short starts at the 36-minute mark.
Go check that out, kids.
That was the first thing I directed, even before Sorority Babes 2. So I'd already had some experience as a director. And I hired my friends, Linnea Quigley and Debbie Rochon, and worked with them on my very first day of shooting, which was reassuring to have your friends there. The way that came about was my producer, Joe Castro, noticed that Debbie and Linnea were going to be at a local convention in Los Angeles. And he said, get them, ask them to stay one extra day. There were only 2 parts left in the film, both of which were written for men, but we hired the women. So in the Personal Demons, Linnea is playing a casting director who's coming on to me, like a casting couch thing. And it was supposed to be a man's role, but it's even funnier with Linnea doing it. It's weird and uncomfortable and kind of funny.
Yeah, that's great. Are those the only 2 movies that you've directed then?
Yeah, so far that's all I've directed. I'm willing to do more, but the opportunities haven't presented themselves yet. So
Well,
I'll hang in there until they do. Meanwhile, I do a lot of acting. It's been a little bit slower this year, but I've been doing more film festivals.
okay.
I just got back from Portland, Oregon, where they screened Personal Demons, and traveling kind of around the country and into Canada and different places, showing films that I've worked on. So that's nice. Also, I've reached a point in my career where I'm starting to get Lifetime Achievement Awards.
Nice.
And it's very gratifying that after 40 years of really hard work, my job is not easy. It's long hours, sometimes 20-hour days. Sometimes you're covered in blood and slime and running in high heels and screaming. And it's not easy, but it's fun. And I'm really glad to get recognition and receive these achievement awards. They're all displayed on my bookcase. So I thank everybody who's presented me with one.
Do you have your hubby you got from the Jamboree up there?
Yes, I have my hubcap too. Yeah, Joe Bob Briggs inducted me, Linnea, and Michelle into the Screen Queen Hall of Fame, and we received a hubby, which is a hubcap from an old vintage car, and I got to say it's the most unusual trophy I've ever received.
Like, we actually put those together for you guys. I was in the back of the stage before the show prepping all of them.
What was the car it came from? Do you remember?
Honestly, I'm not sure. He didn't tell me.
Okay. Yeah, it was from some old vintage car, like a Buick or something. I don't remember. Joe Bob is amazing, isn't he? And he's just really created a niche for himself and become an icon in horror. I started out reading his books, which were hysterically funny because he was the original boobs, babes, and blood kind of guy. And just such a great sense of humor. So I've done a lot of film festivals and conventions with him, and it's a joy every time I get to work with him.
But Brink, this has been a super rad chat. Thank you for coming on the premiere episode of Fantastico After Dark. Very much appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It was fun to be here, and it was just lovely to chat with you.
Take care of yourself, and I'm looking forward to all your upcoming stuff you have planned. Huh. Well, that was a great time.
Brink frickin' rules.
Yep, she sure does.
Even I'm surprised you didn't screw it up.
Piss off, you overhyped Pez dispenser. Alrighty, Fantasticats. That's it for the first episode of Fantastico After Dark. We'll be putting more of these out from time to time. Thanks for joining us, and thank you again to Brinke Stevens.